Let's explore how to configure Git. This involves setting up your identity and customizing various configuration options to suit your needs. Configuring Git is essential for two primary reasons: identity setup and managing configuration levels. First, Git needs to know who you are. This allows Git to properly attribute your commits to you in the project history. Your identity is embedded in every commit, and without specialized tools, cannot be altered later. Second, Git configurations can be applied at three levels: system, global, and local. System configurations apply to all users on the entire system. Global configurations apply to all repositories associated with your user account. Local configurations apply only to the specific repository you're currently working in. To set up your identity in Git, you'll use the git config command. To set your username globally, use the command git config global user.name your name. Replace your name with your actual name. To set your email globally, use the command git config global user.email your .email at example.com. Replace your .email at example.com with your actual email address. Once you've set these, you can verify them using git config global user.name to check your username and git config global user.email to check your email. Remember that these settings will be used for all your commits across all your Git repositories. Git configuration can be managed at three levels: system, global, and local. System-level configurations affect all users on the system and all of their repositories. To set a system-level configuration, use the system flag. For example, to set the default editor for all users to Vim, you would use the command git config system core.editor vim. Global-level configurations apply to your user account and all of your repositories. Use the global flag. For instance, to set your default editor to Visual Studio Code, the command is git config global core.editor code. Finally, local-level configurations apply only to the current repository. Use the local flag. A common use is to set a project-specific email address using the command git config local user.email project-specific at example.com. Here are some essential Git configuration options that can greatly improve your workflow. First, you can set your default text editor, which Git will use for commit messages and other tasks. To set Visual Studio Code as your default editor, use the command git config global core.editor code wait. Next, you can set the default branch name for new repositories. Setting it to main using git config global init a default branch main is increasingly common. You can configure line ending behavior, which is especially important when working on projects across different operating systems. For Linux and Mac systems, use git config global core.autocrolf input. For Windows systems, use git config global core.autocrolf true. To view your Git configuration settings, Git provides a way to see all your settings and their origins. To list all your Git settings, use the command git config list. This will display a comprehensive list of all configuration options currently set in your Git environment. To show the origin of each setting, such as which configuration file it comes from, use the command git config list show origin. You can also view specific settings individually. To view your username, use git config user.name. To view your email, use git config user.email. And to view your configured editor, use git config core.editor. To further enhance your Git workflow, consider these advanced configuration options. You can enable colorful output in your terminal, making it easier to read Git status and diffs. To do this, use the command git config global color.ui auto. You can also set up aliases for common commands, which can save you a lot of typing. For example, you can set co as an alias for checkout using git config global alias co checkout. Similarly, br for branch with git config global alias br branch CI for commit with git config global alias CI commit, and st for status with git config global alias c status. Also, you can configure Git's pull behavior to use rebase by default, which helps keep your commit history cleaner. Use the command git config global pull.rebase true. Let's summarize the key takeaways and best practices for configuring Git. Always set your identity before committing to ensure proper attribution. Use global settings for your personal preferences across all repositories. Use local settings for project-specific needs to avoid conflicts. Create aliases for frequently used commands to improve efficiency. And regularly check your configuration using git config list to ensure everything is set as expected. Git stores configuration files in specific locations depending on the configuration level. System-level configurations are typically stored in /etc/gitconfig. Global configurations are stored in /.gitconfig in your home directory. Local configurations are stored in .git/config within your repository. You can edit your global configuration directly using the command git config global edit. If you like this video, hit that like button and don't forget to subscribe. Visit codelucky.com for more such useful content.